There's a special kind of confidence that only exists on the internet. It's the kind that watches a 6-minute tutorial, skips the safety section, and decides, yeah, I could probably do that. This video isn't about extreme sports. It's about people who looked at activities designed to terrify trained professionals and thought, lessons are optional. What you're about to see is not bad luck. It's not accidents. It's 10 live demonstrations of what happens when ego walks into a system built entirely on physics, training, and consequences, and says, I got this. Some of these people had the gear. Some had the confidence. All of them were missing the same thing: understanding. Pay attention, because every single one of these stories was preventable. Number 1. The Zorb off the mountain. Snow-covered mountains are beautiful, quiet, peaceful, and absolutely not designed for experimental stupidity. But to a man named Trevor, they looked like content. Trevor had recently discovered Zorbing. For those unfamiliar, that's the activity where you climb inside a giant inflatable ball and roll downhill like a human bowling experiment. Now, professionally, this is done on controlled slopes, measured angles, clear paths, no surprises. Trevor saw all that and decided it was unnecessary. Because Trevor didn't need controlled conditions, Trevor had confidence and a mountain. He ordered a Zorb online, watched a couple of clips, and came to one very dangerous conclusion. It's just rolling downhill. How hard could it be? Now let's pause. A Zorb is not a vehicle. It is not steerable. It is not controllable. It is a sphere. And spheres obey one rule. They go wherever gravity tells them to go. Trevor ignored this, because from the outside, it looks simple. Get in, roll, have fun. So he hiked up a snowy slope, not a designated track, not a tested route, just a mountain. His friends were there, phones out, because even before it starts, everyone knows how this ends. Trevor climbed inside, zipped it shut, gave a thumbs up. At this point, Trevor was probably thinking, this is about to be incredible. And for the first few seconds, it was. The ball started rolling, slowly, smoothly, exactly like the videos. Trevor laughed, spinning gently, living the moment. Validation. But here's the thing about uncontrolled environments. They don't stay predictable. The slope steepened, the speed increased, and suddenly, Trevor wasn't rolling. He was accelerating. Fast. Very fast. Inside the sphere, everything became chaos. Up became down. Down became irrelevant. Trevor slammed into the inner walls as the ball picked up speed like a runaway experiment. And outside, the terrain changed. Because mountains are not smooth. They have dips, rocks, uneven patches, things that exist specifically to ruin your plan. The Zorb hit a bump, lifted, shifted direction, and from that point on, Trevor was no longer participating. He was cargo, unsecured, inside a system that had completely taken over. The ball veered off its original path, straight toward an area no one had checked, because no one thought that far ahead. The impact came fast, violent, final. The footage? Shaky, confused, cut off mid-reaction, because even the people filming didn't expect it to escalate that quickly. The official report described it as recreational activity conducted outside designated safety parameters, which is a very calm way of saying he took something designed to be controlled and removed the only thing that made it safe. Trevor wanted a simple thrill, a quick video, a harmless ride downhill, and he got it for a few seconds, until the mountain reminded him that it's not part of your plan. It is the plan, and once you hand control over to gravity, you don't get it back. No. 2. The Amazon Speedwing Expert. There are hobbies, and then there are activities where one small mistake turns you into a statistic. Speed flying sits comfortably in the second category. It's what happens when someone looks at paragliding and says, what if we did this, but faster, lower, and with less room for error? Professionals train for years to do this. They study wind patterns, terrain behavior, control input sensitivity. Because at high speed, close to the ground, You don't get warnings, you get consequences. Enter Dylan, recently discovered extreme sports content. Firm believer that watching enough GoPro footage is basically the same as training. Dylan didn't want to learn speed flying. He wanted to skip to the part where he looks cool doing it. So he did what any modern expert does. He went online, bought a speed wing, watched a few tutorials, and came to the most dangerous conclusion possible. I understand the basics. Now let's pause. Speed wings are not beginner-friendly. They are smaller than paragliders, more responsive, and dramatically less forgiving. Every input matters. Pull too hard, you don't slow down, you turn. Fast. Like an F1 car made of fabric and bad decisions. Dylan ignored all of that, because from his perspective, he had the gear, he had the footage, he had the confidence. What else could he possibly need? He hiked up to a launch point, high altitude, steep drop, beautiful view. The kind of place professionals respect and amateurs underestimate. His friend was filming, because of course he was. Dylan strapped in, checked nothing, looked out over the slope. At this point, Dylan was probably thinking, this is exactly like the videos. He took a step forward, then another. The wing caught air, inflated, lifted, and just like that, he was flying. For a moment, everything worked. Smooth glide, stable line. The exact fantasy he had imagined. Validation. But then, reality asked a question. Do you actually know how to control this? A slight input, just a small correction. That's all it takes. Because in speed flying, small inputs don't create small changes. They create immediate ones. The wing responded, aggressively. Dylan turned, sharper than expected, closer to the slope, faster than he realized. And now, he wasn't flying. He was reacting. Which is the worst possible place to be in a system that punishes hesitation. He pulled again. Wrong direction, wrong timing, wrong everything. The wing dipped, the ground rushed up, and in that exact moment, there was no recovery, no reset, no second attempt, just momentum finishing what ignorance started. The camera caught the silence after, that brief pause where everyone realizes, this isn't part of the trick. The official report later described it as loss of control during untrained aerial activity, which is a very technical way of saying he bought the wing, but skipped the ability to use it. Dylan wanted the shot, the feeling, the identity of someone who does extreme things, and for a few seconds, he had it. He was flying, free, exactly like the videos, until the difference between watching and understanding caught up with him. Because in the air, confidence is not control, and gravity is always part of the lesson. Number 3, the garden hoe ice climber. Ice climbing is one of those activities that looks simple, right up until you understand what's actually happening. From a distance, it's just a person going up a frozen wall. Swing, stick, step, repeat. Easy. Except it's not. Because what you're really doing is hanging your entire body weight on 2 thin pieces of metal embedded in something that melts. Professionals know this. That's why they use specialized ice axes steel engineered for impact and grip techniques designed to distribute force correctly. Enter Greg. Owns tools, loves tools. Firm believer that if 2 things look similar, they are similar. Greg didn't see a difference between an ice axe and a garden hoe, because in his mind, metal is metal, sharp is sharp, and gravity? Optional. Now let's pause. Ice axes are designed to penetrate hard ice, hold under dynamic load, resist snapping under stress. A garden hoe is designed to move dirt occasionally, hit roots absolutely not, hold a human life on a vertical surface. Greg ignored all of this, because buying proper gear would mean spending money, admitting he didn't already know what he was doing, and Greg wasn't here to learn. He was here to prove something. So he grabbed 2 garden hose, headed to a frozen waterfall, and decided, this will work. His friend watched, concerned, which in Greg's mind meant audience secured. He stepped onto the ice, raised the first hoe, swung, It hit. Stuck. Sort of. Good enough. Second swing. Same result. At this point, Greg was probably thinking, see? Same thing. He pulled himself up, weight shifting onto the tools, and for a moment, it worked. Because bad ideas often start by working. That's how they trap you. Greg climbed higher. Swing. Pull. Step. Each move increasing the load on equipment that was never designed for any of it. Then came the moment. Not dramatic, not loud, just inevitable. The metal bent. Slightly. Then more. Because unlike ice axes, garden hose don't negotiate with physics. They fail. And when they fail, they don't warn you. They just stop holding. One tool slipped. The other followed. And just like that, Greg wasn't climbing anymore. He was falling. No grip. No recovery. No second chance to rethink the plan. Just a straight, uninterrupted drop. Because vertical surfaces don't forgive improvisation. The official report described it as use of improper equipment during climbing activity, which is a very polite way of saying he trusted tools designed for dirt to hold him on ice. Greg wanted to prove something, that experience beats equipment, that confidence beats preparation, that he didn't need specialized tools. And for a few minutes, he almost convinced himself, until the tools reminded him they were never part of that plan. There's a lesson here. If something exists specifically for a job, there's usually a reason. And if your entire strategy is, this looks close enough, you're not solving the problem, you're becoming it. Number 4, the Class 5 kayak. Amateur water looks harmless. That's the first mistake. Because water, in the right conditions, is not soft, it's structure. Moving, shifting, relentless structure. Whitewater kayaking, real whitewater kayaking, is not a hobby. It's controlled survival. Professionals don't just paddle through rivers. They train for years to read currents, understand hydraulics, recover from capsizing, escape when everything goes wrong, because it will go wrong. Enter Brandon, weekend adventurer, watched exactly enough videos to feel confident and not enough to feel afraid. Brandon didn't want lessons. Lessons take time. Lessons cost money. Lessons imply you don't already know what you're doing. So Brandon skipped them. Instead, he did what modern experts do. He watched YouTube. Saw people navigating raging rivers, flips, rolls, clean recoveries, and came to one beautiful, catastrophic conclusion. It's just paddling, but faster. Now let's pause. There are levels to rivers. Class 1, basically a lazy float. Class 2 to 3, fun, manageable. Class 4, dangerous. Class 5, you better know exactly what you're doing. Brandon chose Class 5, because of course he did. Why start small when you can start stupid? He bought a kayak. Proper shape, good gear, looked the part. Because looking prepared is very different from being prepared. He showed up at the river. Fast current, cold water, loud. The kind of place where even experienced people pause and think. Brandon didn't pause, because hesitation doesn't look good on camera. His friend was filming. Phones out. Same pattern, different environment. At this point, Brandon was probably thinking, this is going to look insane. He pushed off, and immediately, everything changed. The current grabbed him, not gently, not gradually, immediately. Because rivers don't ease you in, they take over. The kayak accelerated, water crashing from all sides, noise overwhelming. No clear path, just movement, fast, unpredictable. Brandon tried to steer, too late. Because steering only works if you already understand where you are. And Brandon didn't. He hit the first rapid. Hard. The kayak tilted. Water rushed over the sides. He overcorrected. Wrong angle, wrong timing. And just like that, he flipped. Now, professionals train for this. It's called the wet exit. You flip, you release the skirt, you get out. Simple. If you've practiced. Brandon had not. So when he flipped, he didn't react. He panicked. Because being upside down in freezing, fast-moving water changes everything, instantly. His world inverted, air gone, sound distorted, current pulling him. And here's the worst part. He didn't know how to get out. Because that skill, the one that matters most, was the one he skipped. He fumbled, pulled at nothing, wasted seconds. And in whitewater, seconds are everything. The river carried him, not as a person, as an object. The kayak pinned, water pressed, relentless force from every direction. There is no pause button in a river, no reset, no, let me try that again. Just pressure, cold, movement. And the realization, too late, that this wasn't just paddling, this was survival. The camera on shore kept recording, because that's what cameras do. They don't intervene, they don't understand, they just capture. The official report later described it as untrained entry into Class 5 whitewater conditions, which is a very polite way of saying he skipped the part where you learn how not to die. Brandon wanted adrenaline, a challenge, a video that made him look like he knew what he was doing. And for a few seconds, he had it. Speed, action, intensity, exactly like the videos. Until the part the videos don't show caught up with him. Because water doesn't care how confident you are. It doesn't care how many clips you watched. And it definitely doesn't care if you think, how hard could it be? In a river, you don't rise to your confidence. You fall to your training. And Brandon brought exactly none of it. No. 5. The backyard bungee genius. There are 2 ways to experience adrenaline. You can do it the professional way, with training, certified equipment, and people whose entire job is making sure you don't die. Or you can do it the cheaper way, which is where things usually end. Meet Kyle, backyard engineer, firm believer that most industries are just overcharging for common sense. Kyle didn't trust professional bungee jumping. Too expensive, too many rules, too many people telling you what not to do. And in Kyle's world, rules weren't safety measures. They were optional suggestions created by people who lacked imagination. So when he saw a video of someone bungee jumping off a bridge, he didn't think, that requires expertise. He thought, that requires rope. Now let's pause. Bungee jumping is not just elastic cord plus gravity. It is precisely calculated cord length stretch ratio based on body weight, anchor point engineering, dynamic load absorption. Because if you get any of those wrong, you don't bounce, you just fall. Kyle ignored all of this, because math isn't exciting, confidence is. He bought a length of industrial elastic cord online, not rated for human use, not tested for dynamic loads, just stretchy. He tied it to a bridge railing, no redundancy, no backup system, no understanding of force. Then he tied the other end to himself. Now, this is the moment where most people would stop, look down, rethink everything. Kyle did not, because at this point, he was committed. His friends were there, phones out, because nothing attracts an audience like someone about to replace logic with momentum. One friend asked, "Are you sure about this?" Kyle smiled. That smile. The universal signal that no one is about to listen to anything useful. "It's basically the same thing," he said. And right there, that sentence sealed everything. Because basically the same thing has never been true in physics. Ever. At this point, Kyle was probably thinking, people overcomplicate everything. He climbed over the railing, looked down, high enough to matter, low enough to feel manageable, which is the most dangerous height of all. He took a breath, counted down, jumped. And for a split second, it worked. The cord stretched, his body dropped, momentum built, everything moving exactly as expected. Validation. Then, the second half of the equation arrived. Because elastic cords don't just stretch, they recoil. And if they're not designed for human load, they don't recoil correctly. The cord reached its limit, not smoothly, not predictably, but violently. The force reversed direction, hard, too hard, because there was no calibration, no controlled deceleration, just raw physics snapping back into place. Kyle's body reacted to a force it was never meant to handle. The system he built did exactly what it was capable of doing. which was not what he needed. There was no second bounce, no smooth recovery, no cinematic moment where everything looks impressive. Just one chaotic exchange between gravity and a cord that had no idea it was responsible for a human life. The footage ended abruptly, because there's always a moment when people stop filming and start understanding. The official report described it as improvised bungee setup without proper load calculations, which is a very polite way of saying he replaced engineering with confidence. Kyle wanted control, a cheaper version, a smarter way, a shortcut to the same result, and he got something very close. Close enough to start the process, not close enough to finish it safely. There's a lesson here. Some systems are not expensive because people are greedy. They're expensive because failure is not an option. And when you try to recreate them with guesswork, cheaper materials, and zero understanding, you're not saving money. You're just moving the cost to a different part of the story. Because in extreme sports, you don't pay for the jump. You pay for the part that keeps you alive after it. And Kyle skipped that part entirely. Number 6, the watermelon slingshot. There is a specific type of intelligence that only appears in backyards. It doesn't use equations. It doesn't use measurements. It uses one sentence. Yeah, that looks about right. Meet Darren, Texas, self-taught engineer, meaning he taught himself exactly what he wanted to hear. Darren didn't build useful things. He built experiments. Previous projects included a cannon that removed part of his fence, a jet-powered bike that introduced itself to his neighbor's fence, and a potato launcher that upgraded a window into a memory. So when Darren announced his next idea, no one asked if it was safe. They asked if they should start recording. His masterpiece? A giant slingshot. Not a toy, a full-scale launch system made from 2 wooden poles, industrial tubing, and confidence doing all the heavy lifting. The goal? Launch a watermelon straight into the sky. Track it, catch it. Because nothing says good plan like turning gravity into a game of catch. Now let's pause. Basic physics. What goes up, comes down. And if it goes up fast enough, it comes down faster. A watermelon weighs around 15 pounds. At high speed, that's not fruit anymore. That's a problem. Darren ignored this, because Darren didn't see risk. He saw content. He set up the camera, loaded the watermelon, and aimed the slingshot, straight up, 90 degrees, directly above his own head. Which is not a trajectory. It's a commitment. His friend, holding the camera from what he hoped was a safe distance, asked, "Maybe step aside after you launch it?" Darren laughed, because stepping aside would imply doubt, and doubt doesn't go viral. "I'm going to track it all the way up, and catch it on the way down." That sentence should come with a warning label. At this point, Darren was probably thinking, this is going to be perfect. He pulled the bands back. The tension built. You could hear it. That low, stretched sound of stored energy waiting to be released. The kind of sound that should make you stop. Darren didn't stop. He released. The slingshot snapped forward with a thunderclap. The watermelon launched. Fast. Violent. Clean trajectory. Up, up, up. Smaller, smaller. Gone. For a moment, everything was silent. Darren looked up, shielding his eyes from the sun, trying to track something he could no longer see. "Where is it?" he said. "I can't see it." And right there, that exact moment, was the last moment he was part of the plan. Because while he was looking up, the watermelon had already reached its peak and had already started coming back. Fast. Very fast. But Darren couldn't see it, because staring into the sun has one very consistent result. You don't see anything else. So while his vision was filled with white, gravity was finishing the equation. The watermelon returned, on target, exactly where it was launched from. Because physics is extremely consistent, even when people are not. The impact was immediate, final, and completely predictable to anyone who had considered step 2 of the plan. The camera kept recording, because cameras don't panic, they just document. The official report described it as fatal impact caused by falling object during homemade launch experiment, which is a very formal way of saying he built a system and forgot he was standing at the landing point. Darren wanted a viral moment, a perfect shot, a demonstration of backyard brilliance, and he got it. One clean launch, one perfect arc, one very precise landing, just not where he expected it to matter. There's a lesson here. Gravity is patient. It doesn't interrupt your idea. It waits. It lets you finish. And then it finishes you. Number 7. The DIY scuba certification. There are certain activities where the first step is get certified. Not optional, not recommended, required. Scuba diving is one of them. Because underwater, you are not in control. Your body is not designed for it. Your instincts don't work the same. And your mistakes don't stay small. Professionals understand this. That's why they train. They learn how pressure affects the body, how to control buoyancy, how to breathe calmly under stress, and most importantly, how to not panic. Enter Ethan, tech guy, believes information is free and therefore, so is expertise. Ethan didn't want to take a scuba course. Too slow, too expensive, too many instructors telling him what to do. So he did what modern experts do. He researched. Videos, forums, comment sections, the most dangerous classroom on Earth. And after a few days of digital education, Ethan reached a conclusion that should never be reached. I understand how this works. Now let's pause. Scuba diving is not about breathing underwater. It's about managing pressure, air consumption, ascent and descent, and your own brain when things go wrong. Because the moment you panic underwater, you stop thinking. And when you stop thinking, you start reacting. Ethan ignored all of that. Because from his perspective, he had the tank, he had the gear, he had the knowledge. What else could he possibly need? He bought secondhand equipment, tank, regulator, mask. Everything looked correct, which is the most dangerous kind of wrong. He chose a location, an old quarry lake, deep, cold, dark, the kind of place experienced divers treat with caution, and amateurs treat like an opportunity. His friend stayed on shore, camera ready, because at this point, that's just part of the ritual. Ethan suited up, checked nothing, took a breath through the regulator. It worked. Air in, air out. At this point, Ethan was probably thinking, see, it's not that complicated. He stepped into the water. Cold shock hit immediately, breathing quickened, heart rate up. But he pushed through, because backing out doesn't look good on camera. He submerged, and instantly, everything changed. Sound disappeared, vision narrowed, movement slowed. Because underwater is not just a different place, it's a different system. Ethan descended, too fast, because he didn't understand buoyancy, didn't adjust properly, didn't compensate. So instead of a controlled descent, he dropped, deeper, darker, colder. At this point, small mistakes become big ones, because depth introduces pressure, and pressure changes everything. His breathing increased, faster, shallower, which is exactly what you're not supposed to do. Air consumption skyrocketed, panic started building. And here's the critical part. Ethan didn't know how to manage it, because that's what training teaches. Not how to dive, but how to stay calm when diving goes wrong. He looked up. The surface was farther than expected, because distance underwater feels different. He tried to ascend. Too fast. Wrong control. Wrong movement. His body reacted. Instinct over logic, which underwater is a dangerous trade. Breathing became chaotic, movements uncoordinated. And in that moment, he wasn't diving anymore. He was surviving, without knowing how. The system he entered had no tolerance for improvisation, and improvisation was all he had. On the surface, his friend kept filming, because from above, it didn't look dramatic, just ripples, just movement, just someone figuring it out. But underwater, everything was collapsing. The official report described it as uncertified dive with improper descent and ascent control, which is a very calm way of saying he skipped the part where you learn how not to panic. Ethan wanted to prove something, that knowledge is accessible, that training is optional, that experience can be downloaded, and for a moment, it felt true. He was underwater, breathing, doing it, until the part that can't be learned from a screen took over. Because scuba diving is not about knowing what to do. It's about knowing what to do when your brain stops working. And Ethan never learned that part. There's a lesson here. Some environments don't forgive mistakes. They amplify them. And underwater, you don't get time to figure things out. You either know or you don't. Number 8. The rooftop parkour philosopher. There's a certain type of confidence that only comes from watching other people do something perfectly. Parkour is one of those things. On screen, it looks effortless. Smooth jumps, clean landings, gravity treated like a suggestion. What you don't see is years of training, muscle memory, precision measured in inches. Because in parkour, being off by a little is being off by everything. Enter Jason, urban explorer. Recently completed a 4-hour deep dive into parkour videos, which, in his mind, translated to, I understand movement. Jason didn't want to train. Training happens in gyms, on mats, with repetition. Jason wanted the real thing, the aesthetic, the shot. The moment where it looks like you belong somewhere you absolutely don't. So he chose a location, downtown rooftops, concrete, gaps, edges that don't forgive mistakes. The kind of environment professionals respect and amateurs underestimate. Now let's pause. Parkour is not about jumping. It's about precision under pressure. Distance matters. Foot placement matters. Body control matters. Because when you jump across a gap, there is no correction mid-air. There is only commit, land, or miss. Jason ignored this. Because from his perspective, he was athletic. He understood the concept. He had seen it done. What else could he possibly need? His friend was filming, of course. Because if you're going to risk everything, it should at least look good. Jason approached the edge, measured the gap visually, didn't actually measure it, just looked, and came to the most dangerous conclusion. Yeah, I can make that. At this point, Jason was probably thinking, this is just mental. He stepped back, took a breath, ran forward, jumped, and for a fraction of a second, everything looked perfect. Clean takeoff, good height, solid form, exactly like the videos. But here's the part videos don't emphasize enough. Landing is everything, and landing requires exact distance, exact timing, exact control. Jason didn't have exact, he had close. And in parkour, close doesn't count. His foot hit the edge, not the center. Not stable, just enough to touch, not enough to hold. And in that exact moment, the outcome was decided. Because when your landing fails, there is no recovery. His weight shifted forward, balance gone, momentum continued, and the gap he thought he had cleared became the space he was now inside. There's a moment, a very specific moment, when your body understands what just happened before your brain catches up. Jason had that moment. Then gravity finished the conversation. The camera caught the silence after. That pause where no one says anything. Because everyone knows, there's nothing to say. The official report described it as fall during unauthorized rooftop activity, which is a very clean way of saying he tried to turn movement into identity without learning how to control it. Jason wanted the shot, the look, the feeling of being someone who does impossible things. And for 1 second, he was that person. Mid-air. Perfect. Exactly like the videos. Until reality reminded him, videos end before the landing. There's a lesson here. Parkour isn't about jumping gaps. It's about knowing your limits. And the moment you replace measurement with belief, you're no longer doing parkour. You're just falling with confidence. Number 9. The cheap carabiner hammock photo. There's a modern survival instinct that didn't exist 20 years ago. It's called This would look insane on Instagram. Meet Alex, content creator, believes moments don't count unless they're documented from the correct angle. Alex didn't travel for relaxation, he traveled for shots, cliffs, sunsets, places where the background does most of the work. And on this particular trip, he found the perfect location. A canyon overlook, massive drop, clean horizon. Exactly the kind of place where one photo can say, "I'm living life at the edge." Alex had a hammock, bright color, lightweight, perfect aesthetic. The plan? String it between two anchor points near the cliff. Lie down, relax, capture the moment. Because nothing says peaceful lifestyle like turning gravity into a background detail. Now let's pause. Hammocks are simple, but the system holding them up is not. Everything depends on anchor strength, rope integrity, and most importantly, the connectors. Carabiners. Those small metal clips that look harmless, but carry your entire body weight. Professional carabiners are rated, tested, designed to handle dynamic load. Alex didn't buy those, because those are expensive, and expensive doesn't match the minimalist aesthetic. Instead, he used decorative carabiners, the kind you find on keychains, lightweight, shiny, and absolutely not designed to hold a human life over a canyon. Alex knew this, technically. But technically isn't the same as emotionally understanding that your setup is the only thing between you and nothing. He clipped the hammock, checked it, gave it a small pull. It held, which is the most dangerous kind of test, because static testing tells you nothing about dynamic reality. At this point, Alex was probably thinking, "It's fine, I'm not that heavy." He climbed in, slowly, carefully, and for a moment, everything worked. The hammock held. The view was perfect. The shot, exactly what he imagined. He lay back, relaxed, phone out, adjusted the angle, smiled. Validation. But here's the problem. Weight doesn't stay constant. Movement creates force. Shifting position creates load. And dynamic load is what breaks things. Alex adjusted his body, just slightly. But slightly is enough. The force on the carabiners increased, not gradually, but instantly. Because physics doesn't ease into failure, it jumps. The metal bent, not visibly, not dramatically, just enough. And then it gave. No warning, no sound, just absence. One moment supported, the next, not. The system didn't collapse, it disappeared. Because the weakest part failed exactly the way it was always going to. Alex had one moment, one fraction of awareness where everything made sense. That was not rated for this. Then gravity took over. Clean, immediate, final. The phone? Still recording, because of course it was. The frame captured the horizon, the hammock, and then nothing. The official report described it as equipment failure due to use of non-rated components, which is a very polite way of saying he trusted accessories to do the job of safety equipment. Alex wanted the shot, the moment, the illusion of calm at the edge of danger. And he got it. Perfect lighting, perfect framing, perfect composition. For 1 second. There's a lesson here. In systems where everything matters, the smallest part matters the most. And if your entire setup depends on something designed to hold keys, you're not building a scene, you're building a failure. Because gravity doesn't care about aesthetics, and it definitely doesn't care about your caption. Number 10. The Walmart Wingsuit Mindset. Finale. There are levels to confidence. Normal confidence says, "I think I can try this." Dangerous confidence says, "I've basically already mastered this." And then there's the final level, the one where someone does something once and immediately upgrades themselves in their own head. Meet Ryan, weekend thrill seeker, recently completed 2 tandem skydives, and in his mind, that was enough. Because after falling out of a plane twice with a professional strapped to his back, Ryan reached a conclusion that should never exist. I understand how air works. Now, let's pause. Skydiving is not wingsuiting, not even close. Skydiving is falling, controlled falling. Wingsuiting is flying, and flying requires body control at high speed, understanding glide ratios, precise positioning, and experience measured in hundreds of jumps. Ryan had 2. But numbers are flexible when confidence is involved. He went online, bought a wingsuit, not professional grade, not tested for his level, but it looked right, and looking right is often enough to convince the wrong person. He chose a location, a cliff, high enough to matter, low enough to be unforgiving, because unlike planes, cliffs don't give you time. No altitude buffer, no long fall to figure things out, just immediate consequences. His friend was there, camera ready, because at this point, that's just part of the process. Ryan suited up, zipped in, spread his arms, felt the fabric catch air. At this point, Ryan was probably thinking, this is just like skydiving, but better. That thought is where everything ended. Because wingsuiting is not intuitive. Your body is the wing. Every angle matters. Every movement changes direction. And if you don't know how to control it, you don't glide. You drop. Ryan stepped off the edge, and instantly, he was in it. Air rushing, speed building, the suit inflated. For a fraction of a second, it worked. He moved forward, not just down, forward. And that one moment of success was the most dangerous part, because it confirmed everything he believed. I knew it. But here's the problem. Initial stability is not control, and control is what you need when things change. The airflow shifted. His body position was slightly off, just enough, because in wingsuiting, slight errors scale fast. The glide path changed, lower than expected, closer to terrain, faster than he realized. Ryan tried to adjust, moved his arms, shifted his legs, but adjustments require understanding, and Ryan was improvising inside a system that doesn't allow improvisation. He wasn't flying anymore, he was reacting, and reacting at high speed near solid ground is not a strategy, it's a countdown. The terrain rose, distance closed, margin disappeared, and in that final moment, there was no correction left to make, no second input, no recovery window, just the end of a decision that started long before the jump. The camera kept recording, because that's what cameras do. They don't understand what's happening. They just capture the moment it becomes irreversible. The official report described it as fatal base jump conducted without sufficient experience, which is a very structured way of saying, he skipped the part where you earn the right to try this. Ryan wanted the feeling, the identity, the moment where he becomes the guy who does impossible things. And for a second, he had it. Air beneath him, movement forward, freedom. Exactly like he imagined. Until reality corrected the version of the story he had written in his head. Because in extreme sports, you don't rise to your confidence. You fall to your experience. And Ryan brought almost none of it. Let's be honest, none of these people thought they were doing something stupid. Every single one of them believed, this will work. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because bad ideas don't feel bad in the beginning. They feel exciting. They feel smart. They feel like shortcuts. So here's the question. Out of all 10, which one made you stop and think, that lesson was literally the whole point of the sport? Drop it in the comments. And if you've ever watched something online and thought, I could do that, just remember, watching is not training, confidence is not skill, and physics doesn't negotiate. Subscribe, because clearly,